Checkout tracking by the NPD Group brings you a receipt collecting system that gathers data anonymously through technology we created, providing your businesses with answers.
So, my name is Jiri. I'm CEO and founder of a company called Shark Punch. I'm mostly going to be talking about our first game, the Masterplan, and kind of our approach to actively managing and handling our player community and kind of trying to build the game with our community. But I mean, as Martin mentioned, we also have a product called Playfield, which is like our kind of like effort to scale up everything we learned doing this with Masterplan. But I'm going to focus mostly on the Masterplan. So since you probably don't know me, just very quick background. This is my 15th year in the games business. I'm from Finland originally. Done most of my career in Finland, but I'm now based in San Francisco. I worked on some of the very, very earliest mobile games on these beautiful devices you see in the corner there. Done web games, PC games, AAA console stuff, worked in games media, founded a few companies, etc. Most previously, I was the CEO of a company called Rocket Pack, which was acquired by Disney Interactive about 4 years ago. I spent a couple of years at Disney, realized that it wasn't really the right environment for me, and left and founded an indie game studio called Shark Punch. So Shark Punch, as mentioned, we've shipped one game today, and it's called the Masterplan. And the Masterplan is a game about stealing things in the 70s. We funded the game ourselves. We announced it at GDC last year. We did Steam Greenlight last summer, which went really well. We went to Steam Early Access in September, spent about eight months in Early Access, and then finally fully launched the game a couple of months ago. And as mentioned, as we built that, we kind of learned a few things about discovery and community building, and so we kind of started this side project called Playfield, which is now becoming our main project actually. Company was founded by myself and some of my colleagues from Rocket Pack and Disney, and we are now 13 people based both here and in Helsinki in Finland, living with the trolls in the forest there, as you put it. So. So the Masterplan is a Steam game, so it's not out on mobile or consoles or anything else. It's on PC, Mac, and Linux, and it's a game about guys who look like this stealing things in the 70s. And as we started talking about Masterplan, we really had this strong feeling that we wanted to build it with the audience. Like we wanted to reach like the people who get it like as soon as possible and pull them in, involve them in figuring out what the game is gonna be. So for us, it was really important to start with a strong, clear, creative concept. And I mean, as dumb as it sounds, our strong, clear, creative concept was, it's a tactical action puzzle game about stealing shit in the 70s. So like, that's fairly specific actually. And we did that with purpose so we kind of knew that some people who heard that phrase, they would go like, oh yeah, like I need to play that game. And most people would go like, well, that sounds kind of dumb. I don't want to play it. But we were totally fine with that because, like, obviously we wanted to find those people who like immediately like got it and wanted to make sure the game happens. So going in with that kind of like pretty specific idea, we wanted to like just release something as early as we can, release something as often as we can, and just like do everything we can to find the people who get the idea and pull them in, work with them in like building a strong community that will help us build a better game for those guys specifically. So, we call this open development. We're not the only ones using this phrase. We're not the only ones doing it, but I think we've been pretty good about practicing what I preach here today. So we booked a booth at GDC last year, and when we did that, we didn't have a game. We didn't even have like any concept art. We had pretty much nothing. But we booked a booth at GDC anyway. We figured like, well, we got a couple of months, we'll make a prototype or something, and we did. But truth is that it was 15 minutes before they opened the doors. Like that was the first time I could actually play the game. The first time I could actually finish a level, and it was really shitty. I mean, it was really ugly, hard to play, very buggy. It didn't really resemble a game that much actually. And most people who sat down and played the game, they pretty much told us as much. Like, okay, well, okay, great, I wish you the best. And you could tell that they didn't really want to have anything to do with it. But some people, they would put on their shark hat, sit there for an hour, talk to us about the game, because like they got the idea. They saw the appeal of these guys with mustaches stealing things in the 70s. And some of those guys would stick around like for the whole development process. So like it's not that many people, but these guys were the kind of seed of our community, and they kind of like stuck with us throughout the whole thing and helped us define what the game would be eventually. So after GDC, we kind of changed some things based on the feedback. We did green lights. It went really well, and then in September we went to early access. And I think early access was great for us. I really enjoyed doing it. I would recommend everybody else tries it at least. And I think one thing we did really right with early access was that we did our best to like actively engage the community. Like we tried to respond to every single piece of feedback, every question, everything. Anytime someone on the internet said something about the master plan while it was on early access, we wanted to be there to respond to them, right? So, and I think that did work really well for us. I think it did result in a better game. I think it did result in more visibility for us. But doing that is kind of tricky because you know, like once people realize that you do read all the feedback, and once they realize that you do actually act based on that feedback, you start getting a lot of feedback. And what often happens is that you get someone who's super vocal about something that doesn't actually matter for most people. So I think the thing we did right was that, like, yes, we read all the feedback, we responded to all of it, but after that we looked at gameplay metrics to actually decide whether we would actually act on it. So we would say like, oh, that's a great thing, like, that's a great idea, we would love to do that, but we have other priorities, and hopefully we can do your thing before we ship the game. Or if we saw from our data that people actually have that, a lot of people have that problem, we would prioritize it, because now we know it's a problem, and we know that people are actively like complaining about it. I guess other thing that we realized pretty early on, that actually like your biggest critics, like the biggest trolls, are pretty much the same people as your biggest fans, because like the reason they are acting so bitchy on an internet forum is because like they saw the trailer or whatever, and they were like, holy shit, this game is the best game ever, I need to play this game. And they bought it in early access, and they were disappointed about something, and now they're angry. But the reason they are angry is because like they really believe in it. They bought the promise, and we under-delivered. So every time we would have someone getting like really like throwing a hissy fit, we would treat them extremely nicely, and really like try to involve them in like figuring out like what is it we need to change about the game so they wouldn't be so angry anymore. And we did this for like every time we had bad feedback, we would always do this. We would always treat them very nicely, pull them in, involve them in fixing it. And what actually happened is that all of those guys, they ended up being like the super fans, like they became like the biggest believers, because like they bought the promise already, and then they kind of fell in love with us as a development team when they saw how well we treated them. And I think one thing that this led to was that our community kind of followed our example. Like they saw how we would treat all newcomers, like regardless of what their attitude was. And we quickly got to a point where, like, whenever someone showed up in the Steam forums complaining about something, like before we heard about it, another member of our community, like someone who paid money for the game, had already gone in there, like welcomed the newcomer, and like made them feel comfortable and resolved their issue before we even knew that there was an issue. So we actually got to a point really fast where we wouldn't have to do anything on the Steam forums anymore. It was all like guys who paid for our game, like wanted to be moderators. They wanted to like do customer support for us for free. So that was a pretty good deal for us. Anyway, after that we launched. We got a decent user rating. Our Metascore is less than I hoped it would be. And I think the lesson there was that having a really strong early adopter community is really great for the kind of later stage of the game, because those guys have been playing the game, since day one. So since like when they bought the game originally, the UI was really bad, but they kind of learned to live with it, and so they became blind to all the like very, very obvious kind of first 15 minutes issues. And of course, us as developers, we were also like, we can't see those problems anymore. Like the first time you pick up the mouse and you try to click around and you don't know what's going on. We don't have that issue, and neither does the early adopter community, which means that once we launched, we got a lot of negative feedback on, like the tutorial, the UI, stuff like that. And it's all stuff that would have been extremely obvious if we had done like one normal usability test. But of course, we relied on our strong early adopter community to tell us what's wrong with the game, and we missed all the stuff that every newcomer would stumble on. So I guess my advice there is, like, if you do this kind of early stage community thing, please make sure you get fresh people coming in all the time, because otherwise you're gonna lose sight of what's happening in those first 15 minutes of playing the game. Right. So active community management. So if you find any success, I think you'll find that people will talk about your game all over the place. But you'll also realize that you're not the only one building your community. You have people all over the internet also building little communities around your game. And of course, you don't really want that. Like instead of having like 20, different communities, instead of having like Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all of these being like kind of like these satellites, you want to have one place where your community lives. Because the more people you have in that one place, the stronger it's gonna be, like in general, because of network effects and all that. So we were, excuse me, we were really active about making sure we're aware of every discussion there is. So we would regularly, we would do Reddit searches. We would do searches on Twitter, YouTube. We would have a Google alert system. Just like every time someone mentioned the master plan anywhere on the internet, we would jump in. We would introduce ourselves as the developer, and then we would invite them over to our Steam forums, which was the place where we wanted to build our community. And I think that's super, super important. If you don't do that, you're not going to have a strong community. And this is actually the reason why we started building Playfield, because it was kind of nice building that community on Steam. Steam has good tools for it, but if you want to then like release your game on mobile or consoles or anything else, your community is trapped inside Steam, and it's kind of hard to move them over to another platform. So with Playfield, we're trying to fix that by being a cross-platform kind of center for your game. Anyway. So I've just got a couple of examples of things we did, or things we did right, in my opinion. So this was one case where I got an alert from Google Alerts, which is like a keyword search that sends you an email if it finds a new page with the keyword. So this was someone who had posted on a Russian pirate forum saying like, "Hey, I've cracked the master plan. Like you can download it for free here and blah 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 blah." And of course, we could have gone there and told them like, "Oh, you guys are assholes! Like, don't steal our game." Instead, we went there and said like, "Okay, hey guys, like it's really great that you enjoyed the game. We understand that it's in early access and that it might be buggy and all that. So hey, if you like the game, if you like the potential in it, maybe you should go buy it on Steam and come join our Steam community and help us figure out what the game is gonna be." And actually, many of these guys did that. Right, and that was all because like we treated, even though they were stealing our game, we still treated them nicely. We invited them to join the community, like be our friends instead of like making them enemies from like day one. So that actually worked really well for us. Some of these guys actually are now moderating our Steam forums, which is kind of cool in like a pretty weird way, but still. Then there was the drill. So. When we did Greenlight, we made a video that showed gameplay footage that was actually like all like 100% faked. Like when we made the Greenlight trailer, the game wasn't really playable. None of the stuff in the trailer actually existed, but we did it knowing that once the game shipped, we could deliver all of that. So like we kind of made a promise that everything you see in the Greenlight trailer is gonna be in the final game. So we were pretty happy with it. We were like a week away from launch, so we had to submit our final builds to a couple of the storefronts. At which point, someone shows up on the forum, like saying, like, "Hey, did I miss something? Like, you guys showed us that drill. Like, there was a drill in the video, but there's no drill in the early access game. Like, I'm angry about this." So what we actually ended up doing is that we were like crunching on the launch version of the game. And we actually ended up crunching like 8 hours more through the night just to add a goddamn drill into the game, because this one guy had seen the video and was really like, for him it was super, super important to have the drill in the game. And we made it happen, and we like posted on Steam forums at like 4 a.m. like, "Okay, here's your drill, enjoy it." And actually it became like a little kind of like almost like a meme in our community because of that. Because it showed, commitment. Like we listened to community feedback. We took it very seriously, and we crunched hours and hours, just to put that little thing in the game because we'd promised it, and then we broke that promise without, realizing we did that. We've also had, since it's early access, so people go in with pretty funny expectations. So like we could, on our early access page, we would clearly say that, hey, this game is not done. You get 2 hours of gameplay. But you still have a lot of people going in, buying the game, expecting like a full, like final quality big game, and they would give us really, really bad reviews. Like this guy, his original review said like worst game ever, scam, do not buy, and we We tried to kind of reach him when he gave us that review, but he wouldn't communicate with us. So we were like, okay, fine. Like he's not happy with the state of the game, so we're just gonna like wait. And once the game is done, we're gonna go back to him and tell him like, hey, the game is now ready. Could you please tell us if it's now closer to what you expected? And actually, we went from like worst game ever scam to like, oh, this game is actually pretty great. I'm recommending it to my friends. And we did this with a whole bunch of people. So when we released the game, we went through every single piece of every single negative review we got, and like addressed the concerns those guys had in their reviews, and actually managed to turn like most of them around to thumbs up from thumbs down. And I think that's one of the great things about Steam, is that it actually allows you to do that. So on Steam, you can actually talk with the guys who leave you a review. It's not anonymous. It's you can actually respond, and they will get a notification about that. So you get a lot more chances to figure out like what is the thing they weren't happy about, and you have a chance to fix it, which is kind of cool. What else? We had a bit of a scandal when we launched the game, because I mean we'd communicated our like launch date for months before we actually launched. What we didn't know that date was just before Steam summer sale started. And we'd also communicated that we would increase the price, but then we would put on a 25% discount to keep it at the same level. And this was something we told the community like half a year before already. But then Steam kind of messed up some of the details, and we ended up in a situation where it looked kind of bad. I mean, so it looked like we'd increased our price, and then added a discount to get more visibility in the summer sale. So we had some pretty angry people on Twitter and Reddit and elsewhere, kind of attacking us. I mean, what this person said was he or she called us shady assholes, to be specific, which kind of felt pretty bad. But so instead of losing our shit, which is usually the kind of way of handling these situations if you're an indie developer on Twitter, we wrote up an extensive blog post, Reddit post, where we like explained the whole like timeline. Like we provided a lot of like links to like previous postings, and just like wrote a very like kind of grown-up analysis of like, hey, here's what happened, here's all the facts. Sorry if you feel bad about this. You can get your money back, and blah 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 blah. And we thought we'd lost this person, but then something happened. A month later, he or she actually noticed our reply, went to read it, and actually apologized to us, which I think is the thing that doesn't ever happen on the internet. So that we went from shady assholes to I'm sorry I got as mad as I did, because we gave him or her a very like grown-up response, treated them as adults and blah 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 blah. So anyway, so we've kind of been doing this community building thing all across the internet, and there's a lot of different platforms, different websites, whatever you want to call them. So I'm just going to talk about like what worked for us, what didn't work. Well, first of all, Facebook did not work. I think Facebook is a pretty crappy place to build your community, because if you have any success in it, if you reach a point where you have let's say thousands of followers, what happens next is that Facebook is gonna want money from you, and every time you want to reach your community, Facebook is gonna want more money from you at all times. So it actually quickly becomes very, very expensive to try to have a discussion with your fans. So we've kind of moved away from Facebook because of this, because you just like, if you do the math, if you want to post something every day, Facebook is not your friend anymore. Mailing list. So we had a mailing list for the game from day one. I haven't seen any great results from that, because people actually hate email. Like no one wants to get emails. So like even though they signed up for the mailing list themselves, usually the reaction when we would email wouldn't be that great. So I'm not sure if mailing lists really make a lot of sense today. Maybe if you only use it to like send out one update when the game is out, might work. But for like regular communication and community building, not a good channel. Twitter was actually kind of cool. I mean, unlike Facebook, Twitter doesn't charge you money to reach your followers, so that's already a pretty big plus for them. Of course, Twitter is also this like endless stream, stream of consciousness kind of thing almost. So like, if you want to do Twitter, you have to be on it like 24 hours a day, which we couldn't do because we're a small team. And I mean, some indies are doing it successfully, but I think it's maybe more work than it's gonna be worth, for most of us. We've also been active on a lot of gaming sites, so whenever there was like a preview or like some kind of an article about us, we would be sure that we were active in the comments. didn't ever get any great results from that because usually the quality of discussion is just kind of low. Like people on gaming websites, they are there to start flame wars, and usually they're not that interested in your game. They are part of that gaming site's community, and they will probably stay there instead of like becoming a member of your community. But I mean, Twitter and these sites are still very good ways of like just like slowly pulling in a few more people to your community, one thing at a time. Steam is actually really good. I mean, Steam has great community tools, has discussions, people can upload images, there's a lot of stuff you can do with your community on Steam. We were very happy with it as such, but as already mentioned, Steam is also Steam specific. So like if you're doing a multi-platform title or if you're doing a mobile game or whatever, then obviously you can't use Steam's tools. And even if you start on PC, you're still going to end up in a situation where you've built your community on Steam and then you want to do a console version and suddenly you can't involve those guys anymore. So I'm kind of advocating against using Steam as a community hub. Use something else like Playfield. Reddit has been very good for us. So Reddit is full of people who are really, really active, really passionate. They care a lot about the stuff they talk about on Reddit. But what we learned quickly is that Reddit has a very, very specific etiquette. And if you don't follow it, there's going to be a lot of shit. So I kind of almost got banned several times for stuff that Reddit moderators thought was, self-promotion, which it was, to be honest. But I thought it was still interesting content. But so Reddit is great, but you have to know what you're doing before you post it, because they will kill you pretty fast if you don't follow the etiquette. Gaming forums have been great, so I think it's been really, really good for us to use Google Alerts to like learn if there's a discussion on a gaming forum somewhere and jump in there as a developer, because like people really they get surprised when they see the developer of a game they're talking about show up in the comments and invite you to kind of participate in the discussion elsewhere. We got a lot of like really passionate fans because we did this, and Google Alerts is a great tool for making sure you know of all those discussions. I guess the only bad thing about Google Alerts is that if your game is called the Masterplan, for example, you will get an email every day about music videos from Oasis. So which is kind of cool. It's a good song, but still. And yeah, finally, of course, self-promotion. Playfield is built for this thing, so hopefully it's gonna make our life easier and hopefully yours as well. Anyway, so just like kind of sum it up, like lessons learned, all that. How do you tame the trolls? Well, I think the main thing is that you gotta be present, because like if people are complaining about your game somewhere and you're not there, it might snowball into kind of a shitstorm before you realize it. So I think it's really important to be active, be aware of the discussions, and inject yourself in them before they go out of hand. I think one thing we've done really well is that we always remember that the guy on the other side of the screen is also a person, and we do our best to like remind them that we are people as well. So basically what I mean with that is like whenever someone says something really shitty, it's kind of important to realize that that person might be a 12-year-old who bought your game and had great expectations, and now they're feeling kind of bad because it crashed. I mean, they're usually, most people are decent people. They're just angry because they had higher expectations. And we also really try to present us so like as as the human being I am. So hi, I'm Jiri. I'm the original developer of the Masterplan. Not like, oh, you don't want to be like an anonymous support person. You want to present yourself as yourself, because that really helps people relate to you and work with you. And yeah, the thing about realizing that your biggest critics are really just like waiting to be turned into your biggest fans. Like every time someone has really, really bad criticism, that's an opportunity for you to convert them into someone who really believes in you and your game. And finally, I think it's good to be aware that every time you have a public discussion on the internet with someone who talks about your game, you are shaping the culture of your community. And if you're aware of that, you can get to a point where you have a self-sustaining community that is civilized, is nice, and doesn't need like day-to-day moderation, because everybody is following your example. Like if you treat people in a nice way, they get that and they try to do the same when there's new people in their community. Anyway, so that's kind of that. It was a bit kind of rambling around, but hopefully we got like time for one question, hopefully, maybe. Yeah.
I was wondering, just listening to your talk, it sounds like you guys spent a lot of time on doing this. So kind of how much percentage of the time was like taken away of the actual development of the game to handle the trolls?
Yeah, well, I mean, luckily we actually didn't have that many trolls as such, because we took a lot of preemptive measures as such. But I mean, this was something we would do every day. and I mean, it's easily like 20% of our time. I mean, if we just like focused on building the game, we would have shipped it a lot earlier, but it would have also been a shittier game.
True. So kind of the message is see it as investment in quality of the game.
I think it's worth it, and I mean, also I really think that we did better because the community like saw that we took care of them. So once we launched, they would also like put in some effort to promote us as well. So even we might have spent 20% more resources on it, but we probably sold at least 30% more because of the help we got from the community. So in the end, it's a good investment.
Definitely, yeah. Cool, thanks.
As I was saying, I'm really impressed with the sense of humility and vulnerability with which you guys kind of put yourself out there. I was wondering, in the very beginning, was that a struggle? Was there that fear of being real and admitting that you're less than perfect? And did it take some aligning and then deciding that you're just going to lay it out there to be able to do that?
Yeah, so I mean, especially like, because when we did early access, we actually had some of the guys on the team had a lot of doubts about whether we were like ready for it as such. And I mean, if you're a game designer, then like you want everything to be perfect before you put it out there. So it was like we had to work on that. Like the first couple of months, like we needed to work on that quite a lot to like take a breather. Like when someone is being an idiot on the internet, your natural response is to just be an even bigger idiot. So we had a few moments where I would have to like ask the guys like, okay, like just don't say anything today, sleep on it, and then tomorrow we'll write a civilized answer. But then when the guys on the team like saw how great the response was to like always being nice and like kind of just humble as such, they wanted to keep doing it. Yeah.
Thank you for wonderful pieces of advice.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, was it ever possible to PM the trolls and have this have this conversion process back to your biggest fan, from biggest critics to biggest fans, or was it always a public discussion on the forums?
So I think we've had a couple of occasions where it would be private, like we would do we could do like a direct message on Twitter or such, but we actually kind of wanted to do it like in the kind of in the open, so people would see that. I mean, because every time like someone else like reads that, they see someone going in with kind of like an asshole opinion, and then they see the developers responding in like a very nice manner. Like I think for us like it helps us in the future. It defines how how our community operates. So for me, like I kind of actually prefer to have those discussions out in the open. Like sometimes, of course, if like I mean, of course, if it's like just like a technical issue, like if we realize that like this is just that they're just having it's a bug. Of course, in that case, we would always try to take it offline as soon as possible. So what people would see on the forum that we've responded, we've said like, hey, we will get your bug fixed right away, and can you please email us here? And then we would resolve it offline, and then once it was resolved, we would like post on the forum and say, hey, so if anybody else has this issue, it should be fixed now, and please let us know if it hasn't. Right.
Thank you.
In your game, did you have one of the things we run into is when we engage highly with the community, right? We get this phenomenon that's fishing for buffs. In other words, one class will be like, they're communicating, and they'll just come in and sort of try to get us to buff their class in regards to other things. Did you have game elements that were, I don't want to say competitive because they're not, but like different types of characters, and then people would be coming in to try to influence their game style?
Yeah.
And how did you handle that?
So, are you guys doing a multiplayer game? Yeah, that's because we are strictly single player, so it was easier. But so we actually almost encourage people to do that a little bit, because I think like just asking the community like, hey, should we add this or this next? Like it gets them talking. So we did encourage those discussions quite a lot. But I don't know, somehow we managed to get to a point where like people would still be totally happy with our decision as such. I'm not even sure how we kind of pulled that off, but like, because in the end we would always just make a decision. We would say like, all right guys, we decided that we are gonna add the machine gun next, and we never had anyone going like, but that's not what I wanted. Like, so I don't know. I can see that being a big problem with multiplayer games. We didn't have any like big issues with it ever, actually.
All right.
Cool.
And thank you,
Yeah.
Jiri.
Thank you.
Give him a big round of applause.